Good morning, Willowbrook. Today's devotional is still in John chapter 7, verses 10 through 24. Jesus, being a devout Jew, desired to go to the Feast of the Tabernacles. He did not want to make a big spectacle like his brothers wished for, so he goes in secret. He knew at the feast the Jewish rulers would be watching for him. They were asking, "Where is that man?" In the crowd, people were talking about him. Some were saying, "He is good." Others were saying, "No, he deceives us." But everyone was whispering the words because they were afraid of the Jewish rulers. Verse 14 says that about halfway through the feast, Jesus goes up to the temple and begins to teach. All the people were amazed and asked, "How does this man have such knowledge without having studied?" They knew of Jesus. They knew he was a carpenter. All the religious leaders of the time had spent years studying Old Testament scriptures. Common people had no access to these scriptures and had to depend on the religious leaders that had studied them for their knowledge. In verse 16, Jesus answers their question. "My teaching is not my own. It comes from the one who sent me. If anyone chooses to do God's will, he will find out whether my teaching comes from God or whether I speak on my own. He who speaks on his own does so to gain honor for himself. But he who works for the honor of the one who sent him is a man of truth. There is nothing false about him. Has not Moses given you the law, yet none of you keeps the law? Why are you trying to kill me?" Jesus right here directly accuses the Jews of breaking the law. Moses had given them the law. They glorified the law, but the law required obedience, and evidently none of them could keep it. They were seriously breaking the law, which forbade murder, by plotting to kill Jesus. In verse 20, the crowd, unaware of this plot, shouts, "Who's trying to kill you?" Jesus answered, "I did one miracle and you were all astonished." Then he asked them, "If by the law of Moses you can circumcise a child on the Sabbath, so the law will not be broken, why are you angry with me for healing a whole man on the Sabbath? Stop judging by appearances and make a right judgment." Jesus is rebuking them for not being able to discern the difference between doing God's work of circumcision on the Sabbath and healing a whole body on the Sabbath. The religious leaders loved the letter of the law, but they failed to understand the spirit of the law. The Jews had many laws that they themselves had put into place concerning the Sabbath. According to the Talmud, the primary source for Jewish religious law, there are 39 categories dealing with work on the Sabbath. Each of those 39 categories has 39 subcategories. So there are an awful lot of laws that could not be broken on the Sabbath. A few examples. A person could not spit on the ground on the Sabbath. That would be considered watering, which would be work. But you could spit on a rock. A person could not carry more weight than a dried fig. That would be a burden and constitute work, a Sabbath sin. And last, a person could not take more than 3,000 steps from their house on the Sabbath. These are just a few of the hundreds and hundreds of laws that are practically impossible to keep. Most people wouldn't even know them all, let alone be able to keep them. The miracle that Jesus speaks of in verse 21 that really pushes the leaders over the edge in John chapter 5 is when he heals an invalid man at the pool of Bethesda on the Sabbath. The people know or have heard about his history of miracles, and they know that the leaders have been unable to silence him. And this causes them to openly question their religious leaders. Well, this is an embarrassment and a serious problem for the leaders. This man was not only breaking their Sabbath laws, but he was also calling God his Father and making himself equal with God. All these things just increase their efforts to permanently silence him. In the book of Mark, Jesus asked, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil? To save a life or to kill?" The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. You see, the Sabbath was never intended to be a burden to the people, to overwhelm them with laws that just made their lives more difficult. It was to ease their burdens. The religious leaders spent all their time studying the law. I guess they should have spent more time studying the prophets because they could not see that standing right in front of them was the one who would do all the work necessary for our salvation. He is the one who would fulfill the law and the prophecies so that there would be salvation and righteousness for everyone who believes. Because of the work of Jesus on the cross, we as believers are covered by grace. The work he did was enough to cover all our sins. And since we're deep diving in closing, I want to go back to the verse that really stands out to me. That's verse 17. Jesus says, if anyone chooses to do God's will, he will find out. Jesus said, do God's will, be obedient, and trust in him. Then he will reveal his truths to us. Wow. Willowbrook, be obedient. Trust in him, and while the world is in turmoil, we can find rest in him. I hope that you have a great day.